Shalom, here we are again. I think it's, oh, there it goes again, the numbers. Anyway, my name is Dr. Tova Gold. Okay. My name is Dr. Tova Goldfine, and we are here at TMS Roundtable Live Global with Michael Galinsky and my dearest co-host and friend, Rose Hoy. Hi, Rose. Hi, Michael.
Hello. Good morning, Tova. Good morning, Michael from Australia. Shut down,
Good morning.
Hi.
Well, we're kind of shut down here as well.
Yeah. Today we're going to investigate the mystery of life.
Oh man,
that sweet mystery that we can never understand. And over to you, Michael, to talk to us about the presence process and how that delves into the sweet mystery of life.
I am not. You guys are freezing, so I'm not hearing anything you're saying.
Oh,
I think I'm going to go ahead and restart my wireless router because it's really not working.
Okay.
So give me 1 minute. You guys talk. I'm going to disappear for a second.
Fine with that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Good.
Yeah. You know, when I started sort of reading a little bit about the presence process, I thought,
yeah,
it is about mystery. It's about how we are a mystery. Like we're a mystery to ourselves.
Yeah.
And you know, when we look at like fibromyalgia or any of those things, as Michael said, they're a raft, but we really need to get back to the boat, don't we? And not cling to the raft, which is the chronic pain. And then that I thought, well, the boat is part of our mind, body, spirit connection. And often we'll connect to our body and to our feelings, but then we don't have that extra bit, you know, that extra bit of recognizing our spiritual selves, because we've been so embroiled in science and working out why we've got pain or why we've got suffering, but we haven't connected to that bigger presence. And like John Sklar, when he was talking, I realized he was a Jungian. You know, he wanted to embrace the cosmic unconscious. And I think that this Michael Brown program has something to do with that. Although I don't know about it yet, I haven't got the book. But I think that that's what he's trying to embrace, that unconscious, so that we all are moving together in our consciousness. So
yeah, I think, Rose, you're right about, you know, it's like it exaggerates the imbalance of our connection to the physical body and our attachment to it, because it's something real. So we think everything else is not real. And yet the only way to get freedom and to get out of pain from our point of view is through the spiritual, through the emotional. And we have to look at it not from our physical body, but from another tunnel. And this is very scientific. This is, you know, Eastern medicine. This is Eastern, you know, religion. And so again, the spiritual and the emotional, it's not like nothing's religion. It's more the you know, the presence of this moment is this powerful concept. Because if anyone wants to be in the moment and live by that, say goodbye to your pain. That's a done deal. But how come it's so hard to stay in the moment? Why is that become the greatest challenge for us?
Well, that's what I was wondering. You know, there used to be a song, I don't know any more about it than Sweet Mystery of Life, At Last I Found You. At last I know the reasons for it all. It just sort of came to me just before.
Can you sing it?
No. Anyway, I thought, yes, like if we embrace that mystery and don't necessarily look for reasons, maybe that's helpful. And that's maybe what Michael Brown connected to. I've watched a few of his YouTube videos to try and get an idea of where he's coming from.
Now, remember, he developed a horrible neurological condition. I forget the name. There's a name. It's in the science books. I remember it being very painful reading about it and hearing a little bit what Michael said. And he was searching, I think, for 9 years. For an answer. for this answer, and he came up with the presence process, and he wasn't interested in doing webinars and seminars. I just got an email from him. He's not even on Facebook.
Yeah.
So he's a simple guy, but he wrote this book, and then he did a rewrite of it, I guess, to help people. So he's a real messenger.
That's appropriate as a messenger. Yeah.
Right. So what I want to share with some of our viewers until Michael gets back is that I haven't heard about the presence process till I met Michael for my first time he came to Israel. First, he was in Italy making this book about the civilization of malls. It's an amazing book he had printed there. And then he called me and said, I can go through Israel on my way back to America. Should I stop by? And I'm like, oh my God, let's get a movie. And like 2-3 weeks later, we had two. It was amazing. It was like just the way Michael shoots from the hip. And I met him, and you had met him before that, correct? Because he came to Australia.
When he came to Australia, yes, yeah. And it was really lovely meeting Suki and the girls. And
right.
And it was really great. When we did the movie in the Cinema Nova in Melbourne, he was there for the Q&A, and the theatre was full, and the questions were flowing like mad. It was amazing.
Here I am.
Wow. Yeah.
That seems to be better.
Yeah, but we don't see you, bro. We don't see you. We see a big blue space.
I see him.
Though I hear you. Do you see him?
Yep. No worries. I see him and hear him.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
I'm here.
Oh, I don't think. Do you? I don't see you on the screen.
Have you?
Here.
That's weird.
There you are. There's the mystery of life. He's here, but he's not here.
Oh, they see Michael. Okay, as long as they see Michael, maybe I'll just have to go in and go out again. But I can't do that because you guys are on. Let's go. Let's talk.
Maybe.
What, Michael?
I'm just saying. You're still breaking up quite a bit. It might be your internet. I don't know. That's.
Okay, it's possible.
Mine seems to be.
Well, Julie says they see Michael, so maybe it's your internet.
It's fine. So let's continue. I'm okay.
Okay.
Michael, we'd love to hear about your experience with the presence process. And again, I'm most excited about what Dr. John Sarno thought about this, because he'd met some people who were involved with it and felt that it was very much in alignment with the TMS. That's what makes me want to create such a powerful connection for our viewers and for us.
Yeah, as we had talked about earlier, I know Dr. Sklar because when we did a Kickstarter for our movie, he came to me. Well, he backed the project, so I immediately called him because he did it in a very generous way, and he explained who he was and how he'd studied with Dr. Sarno, and he said to me, the one thing that I ask of you is that you really make sure that you take this film to a spiritual place, because it's not somewhere that Dr. Sarno was as comfortable going. But to me, it's a really critical part of this, that it's really not just mind, body, it's mind, body, and spirit. And I was totally in line with that. I had actually just filmed with Prince E the day before. And he's the gentleman who, talks about mind, body, and spirit in relation to all of these ideas and about just kind of coming to acceptance and things like that, but from a spiritual perspective. So I got that in there, and I was still trying to find a way to film with Dr. Sklar. So I actually booked a ticket to film a lecture that he was giving from North Carolina, where I live, to Texas. And I was leaving fairly early on a Saturday, and I was going to film the event that night and leave Sunday morning. I got on, actually, it gets even crazier because I met a woman at the airport who, did the seating and stuff for the airline, who now is a really good friend because she asked about my camera bag. So now we work on films together. But that was just kind of a really good moment. So we get on the plane, we get on the tarmac, and then we just sit there for an hour. And finally, they turn us back to the gate, and they say, listen, the whole East Coast radar is down. I mean, like literally no planes could fly in the U.S. because no one could land on the East Coast because there was no radar. So it was clear that I wasn't going to be able to make it. And I called Dr. Sklar, and he said, it's fine, I understand it. I really want to be in the movie. We're kind of coming to the end of the process. I didn't know how we were going to be able to do that. And so anyway, which makes long story short, he said, just do this for me. Do the presence process. Get the book, do the 10-week program, because I think it's really going to help the movie. And he had told me that 3 or 4 times. And I, like you, Tova, I said, yeah. I need to make time to do that. I need to make. So, but because of the situation, I said, okay, I'll do it. Ordered the book that day. 3 days later, I got it. My wife and I both started doing it. And it was very powerful process. And it really changed my perspective in so many ways. And it's not magic. I didn't have some, come to Jesus moment. But what I did have was a long, slow unfolding of kind of going further down the path all the time, using the tools that I kind of developed over that 10-week program. And I know many people who have done it a number of times. And so I'm excited to redo it and just see where I'm at this time, and
Wow.
see how much more I can get from it. Fantastic. But it is a commitment. I mean, you have to do it twice a day, every day. And of course, sometimes you miss things, but the idea is to commit to it and to really show up and not kind of dodge it like it's dodgeball.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what John Sklar was saying, that by having a broadcast of it, that people have got a particular commitment to it, and they've got feedback, or they've got connection with others doing it, rather than just individually.
Yeah.
Often when you plan to do something and it gets a bit heavy, you don't bother. But if you've got others that are going to be involved with you, you sort of want to make a connection. And I was saying to Tova before, while you were reorganising your computer, that that John reminds me of a Jungian sort of theorist, and wanting to create the collective unconscious sort of within his life and within our lives. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think that's, you got Freud and Jung, and Sarno was Freud. So he wants to take it more in that collective unconscious kind of way. And I think, interestingly enough, everyone is going to have a different thing that resonates with them. So it just depends on who you are and how the language and how the ideas resonate with your own self, not just your own learning, but like what feels right to you. So, it is certainly not going to be right for everybody, but it can be useful for everybody.
Can you talk about, Michael, can you make a connection between how doing this presence process, or even just when I think about why he named it the presence process, like let's say how being in the moment, or learning a habit, or learning to be in the moment can directly affect somebody's pain or disease. Like, can you speak about that from your experience with it?
I still having a little trouble hearing you, but I think what you asked was, just about how the process can help you be in the moment.
Yeah, and help somebody's pain, and help someone's pain, chronic pain.
Yeah, so it really is about being in the present moment. And of course, so many spiritual teachings are like that. I think on the TMS page, you posted something today. It was a quote from the Buddha about what he had gained from meditation. And what he said, I didn't gain anything, but I lost anxiety, depression, and all these other things that are baggage of the future and the past, right? Because in the future, you're projecting into something that you want to be, and you're running from something in the past. It's really only the present that you actually exist. And so both of those things are actually illusions. The past no longer is there, right? And the future
hasn't happened.
May not be yours. Yeah, it hasn't happened, and you may not even get there.
That's
so all you really have is this moment. That's the only thing that's real. That doesn't mean that we want to walk along with blinders, but what tends to happen is the blinders are right here, and they're looking back and forth rather than being in the present moment. So what you really want is kind of glasses that help you stay as firmly in this space, allowing you to have some peripheral vision so that you can be aware of what has happened in the past, but not have that be guiding everything you do, So in other words, not having learned to be afraid of something when it actually doesn't keep you safer. I mean, I think that's one of the most interesting connections to what Dr. Sarna is talking about a lot of the time, which is so much of our pain is actually a learned response to something that we're afraid will cause us pain. And because our amygdala is separate from our cortex, the cortex stops even being involved. So the cortex is your thinking brain. So say you almost get hit by a bus, right? And your amygdala, which is your fight or flight, your lizard brain, responds to the threat. It's aware that it's a threat. It can't articulate, okay, that's a bus, it's coming at me, I've got to be afraid of buses, it's got wheels. Instead, it just says, it catches that peripheral, okay, I got to jump back. And so it saves you. Now, if the amygdala comes with the cortex and says, okay, that thing, what is it? It's a bus? Okay, buses, are those things scary? And your brain goes, yeah, buses are scary. Now, every time you see a bus, flooded with stress hormones, just flooded without even realizing it. And so partly being present and in the presence process means becoming aware of like, whoa, what just happened? Oh, it's a bus. I learned to be afraid of buses. Hey, amygdala, no, we don't need to do that. Let's reset. Buses are fine. Go pet the bus. The bus is fine. Stepping off the curve because you're not in the present moment because you're lost in the past and the future at the same time and you almost get hit by it. That's not so safe. So let's be in the present. Then we're aware of things that are happening and we won't get hit by a bus. You know?
Okay, but my brain takes me, like, my brain has a habit of taking me back to the bus. And it's like my brain has developed this,
right,
like.
So you have right. So you have to retrain your brain by showing it that buses aren't scary.
Right.
Or that the paper that you got in your third class of your college semester, the first one you were aware that, oh my God, I'm really scared of this. The third time you get the paper, your body responds, but you're not even fully conscious of it. You're just like, oh, I'm just feeling anxious, but you're not really aware of why, because it's your unconscious brain that said we need to be vigilant here. So your conscious brain has to go, oh, oh yeah, I'm scared of the paper. I don't need to be scared of this paper. You know, I need to be conscious. I need to pay attention to the fact that I need to do it. But being scared of it isn't helping me do better. In fact, it's making me do worse. So I have to change the way I respond instead of react. And I think that's a really important, that's where I wouldn't say I didn't move past week 3, but week 3, all right, so we'll go back to the presence process. So here's the book. And what you have to do, Michael Brown, let's see. What he says is you really have to read these first 200 pages very slowly, deliberately, repeatedly, and recognize that it's going to annoy you and it's going to be difficult because it's going to seem repetitive and boring. But what he's trying to make clear, even as he writes that, is this whole process, not just these words, is about communicating to that deeper part of your brain. Like you and I can say, hey, brain, don't do that. But this is a system that's developed to help you go deeper and deeper and deeper into the brain in a gentle way. It's kind of like when on your first class of yoga, you don't try to get into a back bend. Because if you do, you're going to screw up your back, right? You know what I mean? You have to slowly move into it. And that's what the 10 weeks is about. So the first 10 weeks is just coming to notice the world around you. And then as you go deeper and deeper into the layers of yourself, you start to have a greater understanding of just how much these things affect you.
Wow.
Sounds fantastic. Looking forward to it now.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And why do you think he splits it up into like 10 chapters? What, Rosie, what do you think about that? That's like
say that again, Toga.
The 10 chapters, I'm looking forward to seeing how it envelops into. It just sounds very, very thorough.
Yeah. And also I like the idea that our life is a mystery. And that's what he seems like he's, like that cortex thing, like he's sort of moving in, down into grounding in, beyond the fear, beyond the need of safety, because they're fundamental things for our development as a human race. But beyond that is this mystery of who are we and
Right.
why are we here and all the rest of that. Why are we on this program right now? I mean, it's a brilliant idea.
Well, I think we're on the program because it's a program of healing.
Yeah.
You know? And that's a long journey, right? And it's about kind of unwinding from some of the things that we thought would keep us safe, that our parents thought would keep us safe, but in fact actually just kind of keep us stuck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And stuck in a particular age sort of as well. You know, like when that bus was coming, if you were 5, well, emotionally in many ways, you can be stuck there and become helpless then in your adult life until you unravel
Right.
that feeling of being in fear. And John Frederickson talks about safety, the idea that these defenses have kept us safe, but they don't work for us anymore. I think that's what Michael Brown is connecting to from the little I've read of it so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, as you said, I just opened up the book and I can just read you each week. So the session 1 is just focusing on becoming aware of our inner presence. And, you know, one way you do that is it's a process of recognizing that we aren't our thoughts. So when you think about, like, if you hear, like if you're thinking something,
Mm-hmm.
well, who's doing the thinking? Where's the thought coming from? The thought is arising and we're observing it. But we start to be puppet masters of our thoughts, but unconscious puppet masters. So as a puppet master, you can kind of use the process to get more control over the puppet. Instead of being like, here's the puppet dancing around to the thoughts, you can actually become the puppet master in a sense, like becoming the observer of your thoughts rather than your thoughts. So the ego is so identified with our thinking, like, I think good, I'm good. I think well, in other words. And like, I think intelligently, right? Well, those are ways of pumping up our ego rather than being present. And the more that the ego is in control of the ship, the ego wants to keep us safe, but it's a really bad parent, you know?
As most of us parents are.
And yet the ego has a purpose. It has a purpose. So let's put it into perspective. What do we do with our ego?
Well, the ego helps us navigate the world, but sometimes it keeps us stuck in the dramas of the world rather than observe. I mean, it's funny because, you know, my father's wedding speech was so central to our movie. And it's the presence process in a nutshell. It's like, it just points out that, you know, we're all actors in this world. And the actor part of us is the ego, right? But what he suggests is that we try not to be the star, because the star gets stuck and inflexible and gets stuck in the role and they can't break out of it. So it's much better to be the character actor, recognize that you're playing a part, play it well, play it differently a little bit each day, and in that way not become stuck in these kind of tropes of who you're supposed to be, right? You recognize that you're playing a role, and as long as you recognize it, you're a little bit safer, instead of being so enmeshed in the role that you play a character and then you become that character in real life. You know?
Well, David Liu,
it's fine.
Coined that being stuck in the role as your punitive superego. You know, like it wants to crush you, wants to keep you quiet and still and safe, and not enjoy the whole world. And that's why, you know, that whole mystery is missing for people. You know, that excitement and joy of being human.
Right. Well, because sometimes being stuck feels safer. There's less risk that you might be found out as being a fraud.
Well, when you look at you on the floor in that movie, you know, you're not doing anything, you're not going anywhere, you're safe as could be, you know, like you're back in your mother's womb, so to speak.
Exactly.
Whoa.
No risk.
Right.
Yeah. But that, you know, it's also a great time to then really challenge those things, because you're in a safer place where you can be like, when things are really present, you notice what's going on.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, like, I'm just going to read through the different chapters. So chapter 2 is identifying the messenger. So
good.
The idea of the presence process is your presence. There's a part of you that's more like what we might call our soul, knows what to do, but the ego is kind of running block. And so it's identifying who the messenger is, and that's the presence. So you're starting to see session 1 is, okay, here's this idea of the inner presence. Okay, now session 2 is week 2. Let's identify the messenger, and session 3 is getting the message, and that's really an important one. And I'll come back to that, because for me that's the one that I use on a daily basis. Session 4 was feel it to heal it. So that's like being able to feel the feelings. Session 5 is activating our inner compassion. And so it's like rescuing our child self, as you were pointing out earlier, Rose, that we get stuck in that place. And so it's our 5-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old self, whatever, trying to protect itself still then. So it's like ego stuckness in the past, right? But then you have layers on top of it. But that 5-year-old is the puppet master rather than the presence.
Exactly.
Right? And so recognizing that is helpful. So session 6 is decreasing our negative emotional charge. And so it's kind of an emotional cleansing process. Session 7 is feeling our way through it, cooling off the ego, getting the ego to calm down. Session 8 is activating peace of mind through forgiveness. Another absolutely important, part of all of this process is, because if you can't forgive anyone else, then you can't forgive yourself. But also when you're not forgiving anyone else, like you're like, I'm so mad at that person, I'm going to hold on to it. Like the only person you're hurting is you. It's like, I want to stick them with this knife, except I'm holding it so tightly, it's cutting my hand.
Right, exactly.
And then, session 9 is restoring emotional balance. And session 10 is living on purpose. But so for me, session 3 is really the fulcrum point of the process. The first 2 sessions are kind of becoming aware of the presence. And session 3, I'll talk about, because I think it's really important. It's a lot about anger or any big feeling, but it's like when you feel that feeling, right? The feeling is the energy is to react. Like, right, if someone says something that makes you mad, you want to get mad right back, right? Like you react with anger. But what it teaches you is that anger is yours. They didn't make you angry. You had a frame and a perspective that said something should be this way. And if you're not doing it this way, that makes me angry. And so then once you start to break down what that framing is and your expectation, you realize, oh, I can respond without anger. So the point is if you're angry, you're expanding an emotional charge. If someone expands an emotional charge at you, what are you going to do? You're going to respond or react usually with anger. However, if someone is blah at you and you just go, oh, and you let it fly through, they may do it again, but it's not doing what the drama expects to have happen. And so you don't engage in that drama with them. And then the drama just falls apart. So the more that you are able to respond, I mean, that doesn't mean that you don't recognize that what the person is doing is completely out of line. But if you can respond rather than react, you can subvert the process that wraps us into these dramas throughout our lives.
That's right.
So true. So true.
Yeah.
So true.
But it's not easy because the reaction can be quite powerful.
Yeah. Have we got any questions about it?
No, we have a bunch of people watching, but they're not asking any questions, but they're commenting to each other, which is delightful. Each chapter sounded really good. Like each session sounded so interesting. And I can just see how I can see the relationship between that and some of Sarno's work. It's just fascinating, and I'm very excited to do it.
Oh, it's completely related to every aspect.
Yeah.
Every aspect of Sano's work is obviously in that, but there's more. From what I've watched on his YouTube channel, there's much more to what Michael Brown is saying than what Sano was saying.
Right. It goes to spiritual place, into a broader place. I mean, one of the great revelations of making this movie, and one of the difficulties of making it from the beginning, was that it was a small movie, right? Because it was about Dr. Sarno, which was hugely important. But it made him, by doing it that way, it made him isolated and his ideas isolated. And so and I stumbled on Dr. Mate's book, When the Body Says No, and he's describing exactly the same thing, but from his different medical perspective. So he was tying it to all the autoimmune diseases. Same process. The repression of emotions causes the physical body to attack itself, essentially. And awareness of this and changing one's way of being in the world was healing. Okay, so now it took it from a specific to a general. And I think for me, what's so important is recognizing the way that we think is, as so many people go on a healing path, they're looking for that life raft, that hook, that one thing that's going to fix it. But instead, life is incredibly complex and yet so simple at the same time. Yeah. And it's about embracing that. Like, we can gently go into the complexity, but if we don't hold on to the simple, that we're trying to remain in balance or find balance. So for instance, maybe you see the answer and you're like, I really wish I could do yoga. Like, look how that person's doing yoga. They're standing on their big toe while holding their other big toe, over their head. Wow, that's yoga. But it's not your yoga yet. Your yoga is trying to balance in mountain pose, because you're not there, and that's the future. And if you try to project yourself there, you're never going to get there. So first you get into mountain pose, and then maybe you do a forward fold, and maybe you do a half forward fold on a chair, because that's all you can do. But you have to do it mindfully at a pace that you can maintain, while also challenging yourself. That's the thing. You have to continually challenge, but not challenge so much that you go, screw this, I give up.
Right.
Or that you give up.
Yeah. I think that what you reminded me of was the fact that I see with lots of our clients is that, we're hurt by what other people think about us. We don't want to be judged. We don't want to be rejected. We don't want to be betrayed. And how could we, I think this presence process could teach, again, it's not like we grow up insecure. We grow up having feelings and wanting people to be nice and sweet and kind but our perception
but we can't control that though.
Yes. See, that's what I'm getting at. It's
we can't control our environment. Yeah.
Right.
And so
if we have to control our reaction.
Right. But that reaction doesn't help us. So if someone makes us angry and our response, we're only harming ourselves. And so the real twist, go ahead, Rose, you want to say something?
No,
Rose, you wanted to say something?
Our attachment has to be complete. How do I put it? Like when we're younger, we don't have a chance to, our parenting or our parents haven't really been as helpful as they should have been or could have been or ideal. Right. And then what happens is we've got nowhere to go with this sweetness, and we continue to try and be sweet, or angry in a desire to get seen or recognized or held or responded.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it doesn't actually ever work. That's the problem. And so the key is awareness of that and recognizing that whatever someone is projecting at us, their anger or their annoyance or their happiness, is actually about them.
It's about them.
So even when someone is showering us with love, and it feels that it's conditional in some way, then we're afraid of changing, because then we're going to change the condition and we might not get that love. So we can have empathy for the people being like, oh, they're really troubled and that's why they act that way, rather than being like, I can't believe they don't love me. It's like, because it's about them.
It's about
as long as we can become okay with ourselves, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. And the thing is, as someone who's reading the presence process reads it and subtly changes, the interaction with their loved ones will also change, because they will.
And that's difficult.
Sorry?
Right. And they'll be like, hey, you're acting differently. Why are you acting differently? You should just be who you were. We were more comfortable when you didn't change, which is another reason it's actually really good to do the process with people that you love, because then they're going down that same pathway. It'll be a different pathway, but at least you are on a pathway of shared understanding.
Yeah. But I think also when people have self-development and their family around them see that self-development, the person who's having that self-development doesn't rage about things. And then the rest of their group or their community or their family, their vasovagal system settles as well. And there's more harmony.
Yeah.
Especially if the pivotal person changes.
Well, there can be. The problem is, I said it can be, but one of the problems is that sometimes when you change and you have people who aren't on the same page with you, it can feel like a threat. So they can feel that your changing is a threat to them, and they react rather than respond by wanting you to not change. And so just awareness of that helps you not react.
Yeah.
Right.
And
but it's hard. It's not easy.
Yeah. You're actually suggesting that they'll want to sort of poke you to sort of get the old reaction back.
I didn't hear it, but I think you said something like the thing you want to learn to respond rather than react back. Yes.
Yeah. No. The person, your group, your family, whatever, your community, it sort of pokes you a bit to try and get you to react. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, or to go back to who you were, like, oh, look at you, Mr. Big Britches, thinking you know everything now, and we're all stupid. Which
Michael, how did you feel? Michael, Michael, you had to deal with. I remember when the movie came out, you had to deal with people criticizing you for being the star. Remember that people criticized you for putting yourself.
All of the mainstream reviews were like, the LA Times headline was filmmaker hijacks his own film. And the New York Times starts with director distance thyself. Now, it stung a little bit, but mostly because that meant people weren't going to get the movie. But I actually understood what was going on, which is that who decides to be a movie critic? Someone who's very judgmental. And why do we become judgmental? Because we don't want to look inward, right? So it's very easy to recognize that a film that pushes people to be present with their emotions is going to make them uncomfortable.
Whoa.
And they're going to be like, this is uncomfortable. It makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't like it. Who the fuck does this guy think he is? Putting himself in there is the response. Just like a family. Who do you think you are thinking you're going to tell me about myself? You're going to make me understand me. Oh, go,
Amazing.
I had awareness that was about them. So I was okay. Like, I was able to handle that. But it is frustrating that means that the world doesn't get to see the movie because the critic said this is stupid and you should just ignore it.
Right.
It's
true. So Rose, can you see Sar is from India. He's living in India now, but can you see his question?
But what if one person who stresses you out gangs up with others and creates and associates a stigma on you? How do you handle that when such a situation arises? Well, I think Michael just answered that question.
The same way.
It's complex because we get stuck between the ideal of what the idea is. Like, obviously, like I said, for me, it was hard to read those reviews. I mean, I had an ego response, which is like, wow, they're really attacking me. But I also knew that our film is a film, right, that's about how our culture shames us for having emotions. And their response was to directly shame me for having emotions. So it's so clear that that's not about me. That's about them. Like, and I think
that's what Sarah needs to see, that it's not about her or him.
Right.
More about the community.
Yes.
Right. But it's very difficult.
It's hurtful
in our own lives when we're in that situation, because one of our basic needs is human companionship. So if our community is doing that, it's going to change us.
Yeah.
So my suggestion is being able to kind of create some boundaries, not getting involved in it, not buying into the narrative that somebody else is trying to feed back to you. Maybe think about how we're communicating that may make people react negatively, because that can be about us. So we can respond by being thoughtful about, like, am I communicating something I'm not really aware of? Am I asking for something that I don't even realize I'm asking for? So we can take some responsibility for what we're bringing to the situation, but we don't have to own it entirely. And by asking those hard questions about, like, what is it about me? And maybe finding some things that we can shift our way of being, but also recognizing, oh, that's really about, like, their expectation. And I'm not on the same page. So maybe I'm going to set up some boundaries and maybe find people who I can associate with who are going to treat me with respect. But truthfully, sometimes we do create situations where we get treated with disrespect because that's some kind of drama we're unconsciously creating. And so it's important to think about that and think. I mean, I know I've had that in my own life a lot. So I've had to think about, like, what am I bringing to it, and that helped me to shift it, find new friends. It's also much more difficult, I'd say, when we're in ages from 12 to 24, when everyone's a little bit less able to respond, right? Because we're surging with hormones and we're still finding out who we are. And once we kind of figure out who we are a little bit, it's easier to kind of shift a little bit more gracefully and to find people that we can associate with in comfortable ways.
So true.
Well, could I just sort of add to that comment also that punitive part of us that is self-critical creates that breaking of boundaries, really, because you want to accommodate people that aren't necessarily keeping you safe, I suppose, or keeping you secure, and recreating that distrust and that turmoil within you when you don't have that boundary there, that emotional boundary. And I'm thinking that the emotional boundary is damaged by that punitive part that wants you to accommodate everyone except yourself.
Right.
It's my 2 box worth.
Right. No, and what is that? Yeah, exactly. What is that we want to please? Like, that's, people pleasers. It's kind of a common denominator with Sarno people, and it's really, we're back to that, like, basic need of attention. I just want to be liked. I want to be accepted. I don't want to be rejected. And it's really about knowing yourself, being like, oh, I know that's the part of me that wants to be accepted. So I think I'll just neutralize my reaction. I'd like to use the words, if we were to, like, idealize this, which I don't want to do at all, but sometimes we just need to tell our brain, balance, the word balance, just to balance out or to neutralize not to defy my emotions, but to kind of calm. I think calm is better than balance, a balance, like a neutral. What do you think of that, Rose, when you think of how to react to ourselves?
That comment of Viktor Frankl's, you've got 5 seconds. I think it's 5 seconds.
No, it's just between a thought and your action. There's a second.
But how do you access that? That's the problem. It's sort of like another life raft, but you've got to be able to go back to the ship for safety, not stay on the life raft. And recognizing those 5 seconds when you're a reactionary person,
Right.
that's why I think that punitive part blocks that ability to step back, as Michael was
Or
saying.
what you teach people is go into your body and say, what am I feeling now as I'm making a choice between my thought and my action? What am I feeling in my body?
But it's a
And that will tell me that I'm feeling anxiety. So that's kind of another way to make a better choice.
Yeah, by observing your anxiety and asking yourself, well, why on earth would I be anxious about, someone being rude to me? Well, it's their problem.
Right.
But it's making me anxious. So what's going on in me that's creating that anxiety in me? And asking that question. And that's that 5 seconds that Frankel was
That's a little too. It's a little too long. 5 seconds. I think we'll have to find out what Frankel meant.
But if you think for a moment that if you think about that reaction being involved with the present, the future, and the past, right? And if you can stop being in the future and stop being in the past, and you're just in the present, the response is quite a bit easier, right? Because you've taken out all of the bouncing around, and you're just like, what am I feeling now? Well, that offended me. And then you can figure out how to respond. Here's the thing is, if you really think about just the law of energy, right? Like energy doesn't get destroyed, right? It just changes state. But if you ever see, like if you throw a ball at a wall and you throw it really hard, it's going to come back really hard, right? Don't be the wall, you know, be the curtain. So if you throw a ball at a curtain, it just, and then it comes back and it can come back to its presence. But so the harder you are, the more you're going to react. And so the more fluid and open you can be, the point is that then you aren't going to react, and then the chain reaction doesn't exist. That's the main thing about the presence process, is it allows you to respond. And every time you respond, you're basically becoming a de-escalator of all rage, right?
Yeah.
Because at a certain point, if you don't react, then the person can get more rageful at first, but then they don't get recharged
anymore.
It's just they burn out.
Yeah.
Right.
Because you're not giving them back energy to build it.
Yeah.
Here's Fabian's comment. I find it kind of hard to respond without reacting and not repress our emotions of anger, fear. Maybe we should talk about that a little bit.
Right. That's why it's called the presence process. It's not the presence action. It takes work. It takes a lot of untraining and retraining the more that you're able to recognize it. So in fact, in week 3, what you're instructed to do is when you find yourself being angry, leave the situation. Mm-hmm. Be with that feeling,
walk away,
not repress it. And then you can, without being in that space, recognize what it is about you that's causing that reaction. And then you're more able to respond. So then maybe you can come back into the situation and respond. And through that, start to change your core relationships by not feeding into the patterns. Now,
excellent,
as we know,
excellent.
The drama might want to pull you back in, and that's where the next parts of it are, where you're talking about forgiveness and going deeper into these other levels where you need all of these different tools to become truly present. It's very easy to talk about. And I don't mean to be making it sound simple. I'm just saying, here's what you want to do. Mm-hmm. Just like when you go to your first yoga class, here's where we'd like to be. But right now, we're just going to be in mountain pose this whole class. Because all we can really do is find balance standing right now. And some of us, we're going to do mountain pose in a chair because we can't really do it yet, you know?
Yeah.
So it's really about working in simple ways to find balance. And over time, you move down the path. But it's not, let's all be the tortoise, right? No one should be the hare.
Right. Now, I want to respond to Gail's comment. Anxiety is the greatest enemy. I would rather there not be an enemy in this game. I'd rather there be what's healthy, what's not healthy. And anxiety can be there.
You can flip that and say, right, it's a gift. Anxiety is the greatest gift of awareness. If instead of trying to move out of the anxiety, learning to be in it. I need to go get this book, but someone suggested a book, The Cure. Let me go grab it because I think it's a good help. It'll be right back.
Okay. Well, I don't see you anyway, Michael, so I'm happy to have you come back.
There's some comment there about anxiety. If I could just mention while Michael's gone, that anxiety
This is the cool thing about being in your own house. You can find things.
What was that? Upside down.
I said the cool thing is being in your house, you can go grab it. But it's a book called Hope and Help for Your Nerves by, I can't read it, Claire Weekes, Weekes. And it has a lot of good tools for becoming more present with one's anxiety and figuring out how to respond to it. And to deal with it. And several people recommended it to me when I had a friend who was having a lot of trouble with anxiety. And I think it's really a lot of really good tools. And they're tools that help you realize that anxiety is your way into understanding these patterns of behavior and these patterns of thinking, that if you just kind of can learn to be more comfortable with sitting with them, then the anxiety doesn't grow. Because here's the thing, like when you feel anxiety and you react to it, the anxiety spikes. Right. If you feel anxiety and you respond to it, your discomfort might spike a little, but your ability to bring it down through breathing and through other methods of telling your brain that you're safe can really come into play. Yeah. But as long as you stay in a state of holding on to the anxiety or giving into it or being with it or thinking of yourself as the anxiety rather than observing it. And,
or channeling
it without some
channeling it, like to take it and say, how can I use this to help me? I'm in control here. I'm the master here. I'm the puppeteer. How can I use this anxiety to
right? I'm the puppeteer, right? Or so to understand what the different puppet things do. Yeah.
Could I just mention for a moment that with the COVID and that, there's a great deal of anxiety, and that is an external threat. And our anxiety we need to help us to decide how we're going to have safe distancing, safe wear a mask, whatever, or comply with whatever's going on. So when we've got anxiety that's within us and we can't connect to where that anxiety is coming from, that's the pathological problem. Whereas the external,
it's hard.
Yes, but we at the moment, like universally, worldwide, there's a whole lot of anxiety going on because of that unknownness about the future, and even the unknownness at the present moment. And I just want to sort of like explore that a little bit with people and let them recognize that it's okay to be anxious about a threat, because the threat will activate you into doing something positive for you. As Michael was saying before, anxiety is part of us and it's part of our growth or our keeping us safe. But when it's pathological, it destroys us and shuts us up. Sorry.
But anxiety as anxiety as described is often something that we feel out of control. And so I think it's important to be mindful and aware that the anxiety is happening, but not buy into the idea that we have to be anxious. So, for instance, we have different realms of dealing with COVID in my own family. So my wife is more anxious about it, and I'm very careful about it. If I go to the store, I always wear a mask. I avoid people, but I pay attention. And I myself have not found myself being anxious about catching it as much as I am mindful and aware.
Yeah. Mindfulness is related to the anxiety, though. If you think about the vasovagal system being operating, it's the vasovagal system.
I think we're just having a linguistic.
Linguistic.
Yeah, but I mean, I think linguistic issue where I think, so I would describe being aware of a threat as being separate from anxious about a threat. So anxiousness is something that does keep us safe. An awareness does. So I would separate them out. That it's absolutely normal to be anxious, but we want to address it by recognizing how we can be aware and then act in a mindful way. And so not be overwhelmed or overcome by it.
Yeah. But that's why I wanted to address it in the present moment, because we've
absolutely.
got this other thing going on. Like theoretically, we could talk about it if we didn't have COVID, but now we've got COVID all over the place, and that's created a whole new level of anxiety.
Right.
And actually, it ties in so well with
the
process that you were saying. That, you know, like if we hang on to, well, this is going to go wrong for us, instead of being present to the moment, and that we are wearing the mask, we are having that social distancing, well, then we're not thinking about the future or whatever. We're just being online, aren't we?
Yeah. Right. And that's what I'm saying is, so I'm not saying, I'm saying awareness in the present of what dangers are is different than being anxious about the dangers, because anxiety is actually about a fear of the future, more and worries from your past. It's a kind of a non-present, whereas awareness is in this moment. I recognize there are dangers around me, so I'm going to move through them, and I'm not going to be scared because I know I can respond to them as they arise. If someone gets too close to me, I'll back up. You know, if they want to come to me without a mask, I'll say, that's okay. I'm going to step away. And if they want to keep coming, I'll just keep moving away. You know, and I don't have to be mad at them. I just avoid them. I can have a boundary and say, I don't actually have to engage with you. I think it's better that you wear a mask. But part of being aware is, who can you communicate to? That's where a boundary comes up. If you know that you're not going to talk somebody into wearing a mask,
well, don't bother.
Leave.
Right.
It's not. You're not going to. Yeah.
There's a new person, Cheryl Ann. It's nice to meet you. I've not seen you before. And she's asking Michael and Rose, do we really have to discover what our unconscious rage is in order to stop pain?
Do we have to discover, where is it? Do we have to
discover what our unconscious rage is in order to stop pain?
The short answer is no. Can it be helpful to kind of understand what it is? Yes, but the process is still the same.
Yes. Yeah. I think understanding that you've got the unconscious rage is more important than who did it, because then it sort of becomes a blaming thing, I think. Yeah, but you know, like something's gone wrong for
and the blaming never actually helps anyway.
No, exactly.
If you can skip the blame, like, so here's an example, right? Say on some level, you know that your rage is related to your parents, right? Because they weren't very good parents. In fact, they were terrible parents. But if you can go to empathy and realize that their parents were terrible and they had all kinds of trauma, and that's why they did this, not because they're inherently evil people, then it's much easier to forgive them, right? You may not find that they've healed themselves, and you may find you have to disengage from them quite a bit because they won't be willing to own that, and that can be triggering and that can be difficult for you. So boundaries can be really useful, but it's important that they not be punitive boundaries. Like, I can't be with you because you're a jerk and you treated me terribly as a child. Instead, you can just recognize, man, they're really hurting, and you can just say, it's not good for me right now. It's not a good time. Or just create your own boundaries without having it be punitive. Because every time if you do it in a punitive way, then they're going to react even more negatively to you. All you can do is try and be empathetic and take care of yourself as much as you need to at the time. And when you find yourself getting to a kind of a more settled and stronger place, you can try letting down that boundary, and maybe you'll find that now that you're not punitive, they don't feel so judged, and they're able to kind of just relate to you, not as this person that's attacking them or putting all of this guilt and rage on them. There's just ways of dealing with it.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, it reminds me of something. Did you guys read the Radical Forgiveness? Because what he wrote about, he died of cancer, the author. He was a fascinating man. He was British, and he wrote a couple of books called Radical Forgiveness. And he wrote that it was interesting because I agree with you, Michael. I agree that the way that I've been able to manage my trauma is to forgive. And then Rose helped me a lot with understanding that I still can hate the person, but I can forgive them, and the ambiguity of all that. But the thing in Radical Forgiveness was the guy's wife had an affair, and at first he was furious. And what did he do in, his sexuality and her sexuality? He was like furious. And what did he do wrong? And then he was angry, and then he was sad. And then he realized at the end that she needed that for her life, for her completion. And it was a beautiful way of, it's radical. It's radical to look at life that way and to really forgive all the players and give them all, a way out of it. But know that you're being really true to yourself. That was a thing, like forgiving and being really true to yourself. Right, Rose?
Well, it's being true to yourself is what it is, about forgiving yourself for being angry.
Right.
Whatever.
Well, there's a middle place in there as well, which
tell us,
on some level, is it really all that radical to forgive? I mean,
very
it can be difficult. I think I've written several posts about radical forgiveness, but what I'm saying is when we frame forgiveness as being like whole and complete as being radical, what we're doing is we're kind of recognizing linguistically that forgiveness is about us, and when we really talk about it like in the Christian sense, it's really not tied to anything but forgiveness, right? And when we forgive somebody, we give a gift to ourselves, because if we're angry, that anger is toxic. It's bad for us. We can also, as this guy did, recognize, oh, I have something to learn here. Like there was a problem in the relationship that I wasn't copping to, that I wasn't owning my own role in. And once I'm able to own my own role, I can respond to it. Now, if someone feels wronged and they use that as an excuse to not look inward, that's problematic for them. So forgiving in a kind of a deeper way is truly the most healing way to be. Now, we need to recognize when we're angry and recognize when we feel hatred. Otherwise, it just stays stuck in there. We have to process that and let it go, though. So these things, they're both simple and complex again. Like the simple answer is it's always best to forgive. The complex answer is we have some work to do in order to truly do that.
Right.
Yeah. Well, do you have to forgive yourself for being unforgiving, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think with words, we often want things to be binary. Absolute radical forgiveness, or
what do you mean binary?
White, right?
What do you mean by binary? Michael, what do you mean by binary?
Either or. It's like either forgive or not forgive. Right. But everything is gray. There's it's a process. And so we don't forgive in a binary way. We do it in a long-term unfolding. But if we don't turn towards the idea that we want to forgive, then we stay stuck.
Yes. I have a little saying. Can I share it? Anger is an acid. It does more harm to the vessel in which it is stored than in which it is poured. That's mine.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Right, because even if, like, say, you put acid in a lead-lined container, right? In order to hold the acid, you have to be lead, right? You have to be unforgiving and untouchable and not soft. So just having to hold that means that you are hardened, right? And that's not good for you. You want to be the curtain and not the wall.
Exactly. Yeah. That was my mother's favourite saying as we siblings used to fight.
Good memory. Good memory.
Okay.
So Gail has said, but consider the child who needs to forgive as an adult. That's another challenge.
I think that's a really good question, but the point is as the adult, we have to comfort the child within us so that it can forgive. We can't be punitive to the child and say, "Oh, come on already, just forgive your little brother." We have to hold the child till it feels comfortable and say, "It's really much better for you if you let this go." So it's these things that we observe in the real world, we can also enact internally.
John Sklar last week also talked about Miller. I can't remember.
Arthur Miller.
Yeah, and the child, the ugly child, was pursuing him, and when he turned around and accepted the ugly child, the disformed child, and kissed that disformed child, the child then was released. I thought it was just lovely. I need to find where it sort of fits in and what play or whatever, and write something for everyone.
Yeah,
because it's so
amazing.
cool.
Amazing. Yeah. So Michael, so why? And just it's sort of a big thing that on this tape I heard of John Sarno and Dr. Sklar and Michael Brown talking, like, obviously this process is something that some people do over because it's like, I guess you read something and look, they're reading the Bible and the Torah over and over and over again. And you always say, well, I didn't see that part, or I didn't see that part. So it is something like a book that could be like that. That's why I would like our viewers, if they're going to join us in a few weeks, to buy a used copy. I ordered a couple of used copies from Amazon.com, and to write in it and to have a book. Though it also, I found it on a PDF, the Presence Process, so people can even start looking at it. I'm so excited that you mentioned the sessions. They sound really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Don't they? So our plan, we're going to say goodnight soon, but our plan, unless anyone else has questions out there, is to take a week and prepare some people to join our group. And as Michael suggested, and Dr. John Sklar, to have 3 weeks to a month, pretty much a month, right, Michael, to read the first 130 pages?
Well, I mean, I think some people will be able to read it quickly, but the point is you're not supposed to read it quickly. You're supposed to read it slowly and read it repeatedly and just really try to be with it, because it will not interest your thinking brain so much, but that's part of the discipline, is doing these things that aren't easy. And as it goes, you gain a lot from that.
Yeah. Well, Michael, what we've planned, or what we thought would be helpful, would be like, because we've opened up that page, everyone can sort of put something in about their reflections, so that then we expand what's going on. And then Tova and I, or I, whichever, we will write something about our own reflections, and we'll read it along with everyone else.
Right.
So that
and I think that's really great. I will say that one thing that resonates with me is that there are certain people who will feel like they want to be a part of the community and they want to just lurk. They don't want to write. And I think that's totally fine. There are certain people who want to speak in a group and certain people don't. I just wanted to say that out loud so that people don't feel under pressure, like they don't want to do it because then they'll feel naked.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, each person does their own pace. And, I mean, some people will read those 130 pages in one day and it will click. But other people, as you say, might have to just go back over it. And that's why I thought if Tova and I also write, then they've got something to sort of think on from what our understanding has been. To encourage them to sort of look in a different way or whatever. Yeah,
there are no rules, and if there are no rules, there's no stress. Remember,
they're totally rules.
Rose
They're
and I are
rules in the
Rose and I are no stress doctors. We're no stress healers. We are the stressless things in your life. We are not here. We're here to take away the stress. We're shoveling away the stress, right, Rose?
Exactly.
No stress.
Yeah.
No stress.
That's why if we participate rather than be like waiting for everyone else to say something, well, if we commit to do the saying, well, then it leaves others out if they want to, but they can also reflect.
Yeah. I think everyone should be a part of it, but everyone shouldn't feel like they have to say something. That's all I was saying.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
Because,
and we sort of become the sort of link if they're not ready to say something. At least we can, be there as that link. That was all. And
yeah.
Because sometimes self-reflection is quite difficult, and that's one of the things I saw in your movie, Michael. That whole inability to self-reflect and how hard it is, and how guilt-ridden we are when we go to self-reflect and then blame ourselves. Yeah. All right.
Someone asked when is this going to start?
Yeah, I just wrote that. We're gonna send some information out this week. We have a special page. It's called the TMS Roundtable and the Presence Process, and we have the special page that you can sign up. We're going to ask for your email, and we're going to send information about where to. I mean, right now we'd love everyone to get the book or to look at the PDF. Like I said, we prefer the physical book. And then we're going to gather a group on our Facebook page, more or less, very easygoing. And then during the month, we're going to give ourselves a month to read. That's what John Sklar suggested. That's what you suggested, Michael, because you said it was enough time. And then we're going to meet in a Zoom room. Yeah, go ahead. It's a Facebook. We're going to meet in a Zoom room once a week for 10 weeks with John Sklar. Maybe you'll join us sometime, Rose and I, and a lot of people who sign up for this Zoom for like a webinar, and we'll discuss each week. We're going to discuss session 1, session 2, session 3. That's how we're going to do it.
Yeah, and then everyone on the Zoom room can contribute whatever they want to contribute, or just listen, or just watch, or whatever. But by using the Zoom, when we use this program, we can't have everyone coming in and out because it'll be too confusing. But we can only get them to write in. But with the Zoom room, we can, there can be 50 people. It won't matter. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. We decided, it's a good question. Mia is asking about the timing. So depending on the people, we're going to get people's email and see where they're from. Because if we find people are from all over the world, we'll split up the groups and have 1 week, once a week we'll have people on one time zone, and another part of the week we'll have people on another time zone. That's why we have between the 4 of us, maybe you'll help out. And we're hoping to get a lot of people. We're hoping this is a national peace process. Like, this is going to be Woodstock all over again.
On Zoom.
Yeah, with Rosie singing. What do you think, Michael? This is my vision. Do you think it's a little out there? I want it to happen. I want it to happen exactly like I want it to happen.
You got to let go of that, honey.
Okay, thank you.
It's never going to be like that. I mean,
I think it is a good vision. I think it will work.
Yeah. And even being...
I'm really okay if it doesn't. If it's okay, Rose and I need to read it, and that's the most important thing. Right?
Yeah. Well, I've started reading it.
It is important,
Yeah.
Michael, so we'll go ahead. Go ahead, Rose.
Thank you for being with us again.
Yeah.
Sure.
You're a great inspiration for us.
Oh,
thank you.
Yeah. And we'll be in touch with everybody on the Facebook page. We're looking to really invite a lot of people to join us, and we're excited about this. and we'll be continuing our TMS Roundtable each week anyway. Next week it's Alan.
No, it's
Oh
God, Jonathan Neer.
Who?
Jonathan Neer from Israel.
Oh my goodness! Next week. Oh my God! I just talked to him on the phone an hour ago. That's like my short-term memory. We have this amazing guy. Michael, you saw his work. He's going to be on next Monday in English.
Right.
Jonathan Neer, the director, right. And who's doing docutherapy, which is what you're doing. You're doing docutherapy.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah, that guy. Yeah, great.
That's what you're doing. You put yourself through your trauma, and that's how you got better. It's exactly what it is. And you're doing it. It's amazing. You're a real inspiration. So we'll be in touch with everybody. And thank you again, Michael. Good night, Rose, or good morning, Rose. Good night to me. Good afternoon, Michael.
Yeah.
And we'll see everybody. We'll see everybody soon for sure next week. All the best.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.